Hello and welcome to Post Tech Pulse. The future of homes and housing may undergo a massive transformation in the near future, and it could happen at any time. Just as innovations like online ride hailing services rapidly changed transportation, housing may also experience a disruptive shift. When it comes to building a home, most people spend nearly all of their life savings. For many, a house is the single largest investment they will ever make. Unfortunately, a large portion of the world's population cannot even afford to own a home. But one of the biggest limitations of housing today is that houses are fixed to one location because they are built primarily with concrete. Once a house is constructed, it cannot simply be moved to another place. The interesting part is that this limitation no longer exists from a technological standpoint. Today, we have more than enough construction materials and engineering solutions to build homes that can be relocated. Prefab structures, modular homes, and similar construction techniques have all made it possible to dismantle or even transport the entire house to a new location. Despite this, movable housing has not become a mainstream practice. As a result, people remain tied to a single location simply because they cannot move their homes. Selling one house and buying another one is not a very simple process. First, you may not find a suitable house in the area where you want to locate. Even if one is available, it might not meet your needs, preferences, or budget. It is quite surprising that even today, people spend most of their lifetime earnings on a house that cannot be moved. Once it is built, if problems develop in the neighborhood, the housing society, the surrounding area, you are effectively trapped. Relocating to another city becomes significantly more difficult because your largest investment is permanently attached to one piece of land. What makes this even more surprising is that construction technology has advanced to the point where moving a house is entirely feasible. Yet we continue to face problems that should not have existed until now. Consider someone who purchases a home in a housing society in Pakistan, whether it is a private development or a government developed sector. In the case of private housing societies, the developers are naturally operating for profit. If you have lived in major Pakistani cities such as Islamabad, Lahore, or Karachi, you may have noticed a common pattern. Apart from a relatively small number of well managed societies, many private housing societies gradually decline after selling all of their plots. Over time, services deteriorate significantly. The residents who invested their savings into these communities are often left living in increasingly poor conditions. You see private housing societies where sewage flows onto the streets. You see neighborhoods with inadequate security, roads fall into despair, and basic infrastructure is neglected. The society simply stops performing. By that stage, the developers have already earned the profits that they wanted by selling all the plots. Their wealth has multiplied, yet they continue collecting service charges from residents while providing hardly any or no meaningful service in return. This highlights a fundamental problem. When there is no competition, or when a business knows that its customers cannot leave, there is very little incentive to improve. The only effective way to encourage better performance would be if people actually had the ability to leave. Although homeowners would still own the land, and selling it in a declining society might result in a financial loss, they could at least relocate their homes elsewhere. If enough people moved away, the housing society itself would begin to experience the consequences. As infrastructure continues to deteriorate, commercial activity would decline, businesses would struggle, very few people would purchase commercial properties, service charge revenues would decrease, and the management would finally have an incentive to improve its performance. Even if even if it does not significantly affect the developers, the principle remains the same. If people spend their entire life savings, all of their savings, to build a house, they should have the freedom to move it anywhere they feel necessary. Spending everything you have on a home only to remain permanently tied to that location is a serious limitation. If your neighborhood declines, if security worsens, or if your circumstances change, you are effectively stuck in a world where technology already exists. To build movable homes, this is a problem that needs to be solved. I believe that homes built using prefabricated materials, shipping containers, modular construction, RVs, motorhomes, trailer cabins, and even converted buses will become increasingly common in future. The first major step, both in Pakistan and the rest of the world, will likely be the widespread adoption of modular housing. Of course, not all construction materials are the same. Different materials offer different level of strength, durability, and insulation. However, it is important to remember that the majority of the world's population does not have enough capital to build expensive homes. Most people will naturally choose more affordable construction materials. That said, affordability should never come at the expense of structural integrity. These homes must remain safe, durable, and also capable of withstanding earthquakes, hailstorms, and hurricanes. There will also be different quality levels depending upon a person's budget. Some people may choose lower cost materials, while those who can afford better options may invest in stronger materials which provide more insulation, better soundproofing, and a comfortable environment. For example, higher quality flooring and wall systems can significantly reduce the noise between different floors. Like every technology, modular housing will have both advantages and disadvantages. The reality is that most people around the world are not wealthy enough to build luxury homes. For them, simply having a space to live is a blessing. This is why many middle income families choose to live in government provided apartments, even if those apartments are old or poor in a lower condition. They understand that renting a house in big cities, is quite expensive. So owning even a modest apartment is a better option. Owning a small space or having a small space as long as the person is serving. In other words, most people prioritize having secure accommodation over luxury because they simply are not in the income bracket that allows them to make that choice. That is why I believe the next major innovation in construction will be modular housing. The technology exists. Countries like China have demonstrated that large number of buildings can be constructed using prefabricated components rather than traditional brick and concrete methods. Concrete is no longer the option. Modern engineering has advanced to the point where strong, durable structures can be built using new construction techniques. In countries such as Pakistan, Bangladesh, Iran, India, Afghanistan, and many other, constructing 1 or 2 story modular homes is doable. It's not that complex. I believe this transition could begin anytime. Eventually, someone will make modular housing a mainstream trend, and people will gradually move away from conventional concrete construction. Concrete may still be used for foundations, but the house itself could be built using modular components. If a family ever needed to relocate, they could simply dismantle the structure and reassemble it somewhere else. If this approach becomes widely acceptable, construction costs would fall dramatically. Once that stage is reached, I believe another evolution in housing will begin. Some people will choose to live in motorhomes or RVs, larger drivable vehicles such as buses converted into living spaces. This would be especially suitable for individuals or small families. A large bus, such as a converted 40-seater, could potentially provide enough space for a comfortable home. In some cases, it could even be designed in 2 levels, 2 floors, creating separate living areas on the upper and lower floors. Smaller camper vans may be too compact or small for long-term family living, but larger buses could provide a practical alternative. So, rather than constantly driving these motorhomes, people would likely park them in one location for several weeks or several months also. If they change jobs or want to move to another city, they could simply drive their home to a new location. This type of housing would appeal to people who enjoy mobility and flexibility, those who prefer taking their home with them rather than remaining permanently tied to one place. For example, someone who changes jobs frequently may not want to repeatedly dismantle and reassemble a modular home. They may also prefer not to buy and sell land every time. Instead, they could simply move their motorhome or converted touring bus close to their new workplace and leave it parked there for as long as they need it there. Of course, this does not mean people would drive these large vehicles every day. That would be impractical because 40-seater buses are quite huge, and this would also likely contribute to traffic congestion. Instead, these homes would function more like movable residences that remain parked for extended periods of time. Naturally, there would be challenges, obviously. One of the biggest challenges would be access to essential utilities. A motorhome would need reliable connections to water, electricity, sewage. This is why these vehicles would have to be parked in some designated locations rather than just anywhere at all. The vehicle would need to be remain parked in a designated location for months, somewhere equipped with essential services. Alternatively, it could also rely on solar power if that's practical in that region. In some locations, a gas connection could also be available. In fact, it is entirely possible that a new industry could emerge around this concept. Large parking facilities could be developed specifically for motorhomes and movable houses, offering utility connections such as water, electricity, sewage. These facilities could be offered based on monthly charges. One of the biggest advantages of such a system is flexibility. If the neighborhood becomes unsafe or living conditions deteriorate, the owner would simply relocate the motorhome to another location. Today, most people, particularly those who are in the middle or lower income groups, do not have that option. If a neighborhood becomes unsafe or the quality of life declines, they are effectively trapped there forever. Now, with houses on wheels, however, people would have the freedom to relocate. Of course, these homes would still depend on multiple factors. Meanwhile, the housing market continues to sell traditional construction methods to people who are already struggling under the weight of inflation. Many middle class families spend nearly all their savings to build a house. During the construction process, they often rely on contractors who may convince them to purchase materials or features that are not really necessary. As a result, construction costs are always high. The reality is that modern construction has become much more affordable than many people realize. Today, it is possible to build quality homes at a significantly lower cost using alternative construction methods. Yet, many people are not aware of these options. The construction and real estate industries already know that alternatives to conventional brick and concrete construction exist. As with every other major innovation, however, someone must take the first step. Once a startup or any company successfully demonstrates this concept that it can be done on a large scale, it can quickly become a mainstream trend. Modular housing could also provide an important solution for people living under certain circumstances. For example, families who are living in informal settlements, disputed areas, or neighborhoods where the land ownership is not clear yet. These communities usually face the risk of eviction with very little notice. Now, if their homes are made out of concrete, they will lose everything when the demolition takes place. If their homes were modular or prefabricated, these families could simply relocate from their homes to another piece of land. This would be especially beneficial for people with lower end or low income. Human beings naturally tend to continue doing things the way they have always been doing since a long time. Even when better alternatives exist, many people hesitate to adopt simple solutions just because they are not familiar with them. This is why I believe this transformation will most likely begin with a disruptive effort by some organization willing to invest substantial capital into building modular homes. These homes could be offered in different sizes, from single rooms to 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, or even larger. Entire apartment complexes could also be constructed using the same modular approach. When that happens, I believe the housing industry could change dramatically. This is an innovation that is simply waiting to happen. As for motorhomes, they make an excellent solution for some people, but not for everyone. Many families would find a small amount of space too restrictive. The middle ground and the solution that I believe most people, especially those in the middle and lower income groups, would accept is that a compact prefab home is made up of modular units. For example, a home could consist of 2 or 3 room modules connected together, along with a shared open living area. This would provide enough space for a family while allowing the house to relocate wherever necessary. Technically, if it is possible to dismantle an entire modular house and transport it to another location, it is possible. However, I think even a better approach would be to move each room as a complete unit rather than dismantling everything. The furniture and appliances and household belongings could be transported separately, but the room remains intact. A practical room module might be around 10 feet wide, and it could be 15 to 20 feet long. It could be 12 feet wide also. The reason I suggest this is because the standard of shipping containers is usually 8 feet wide. However, special transport trailers that exist already, they could accommodate wider loads. A 10 feet wide module would extend slightly beyond the width of a trailer, but that's not a major obstacle. In many countries, oversized loads are already transported safely under some special regulations. Of course, people would not be relocating their homes every week. Moving a house would be an occasional event. Perhaps only when changing cities or moving for work. In countries with less restrictive transport regulations, the process could become simpler. This is why I believe modular room units represent the best compromise between affordability, practicality, and mobility. Families could purchase 2-room, 3-room, or even larger homes depending on their budget, and they could add or remove modules as they need. Another aspect that deserves attention is ceiling height. Most prefab container homes today have an interior ceiling height of around 8 feet. Although this is functional, I believe this is quite cramped. Increasing the ceiling height to around 10 or even 12 feet would create a much open and comfortable living environment. Lower ceilings can improve air conditioning efficiency by reducing the volume of air that needs to be cooled. The additional sense of space provided by higher ceilings may be worth the slight increase in energy consumption. Overall, I believe this approach is technically achievable. Materials exist, engineering techniques already exist, the manufacturing capability already exists. What is missing is someone willing to invest enough capital and disrupt the market. Once that happens, people would gradually move away from concretization, a construction method that is quite outdated. Motorhomes, RVs would also have their place. they are most likely to appeal to individuals who prefer higher mobility or highly mobile lifestyle. But families would rather require more space. For them, modular room units may be the ideal solution. Whether these modules measure by 12 feet or 12 by 12 or 12 by 20 or even 8 by 20, they can be combined in different ways to create comfortable homes while still preserving the ability to relocate anytime. That, I think, is the most probable direction the future of housing could take. Thank you for listening.